Well, I'm here with Saikat Chakrabarti, who is running for Congress against Nancy Pelosi. And you're not new to the scene here. You've been around for a while. You were the guy who, really brought AOC to the scene. And now you're running for Congress. Why now?
Yeah, and I would say I wasn't the guy. It was a team effort. There's a bunch of us that worked on that. But yeah, I worked on Justice Democrats. I helped start that group after I worked on the Bernie campaign in 2016. And I was recruiting a bunch of people to run for Congress at the time, with the idea being we should actually have people running who aren't bought out by the corporations, who have grassroots energy, and who would be running on an actual plan to make life better for people. Our thesis really with Justice Democrats was if the Democrats don't have a real way to improve people's material conditions, we might defeat the fascists once, but then they're going to come back. I didn't think it'd be Trump exactly, but we thought somebody was going to come back in 2024. And that's basically what happened, right? Like Trump just won again. And I'd say he won largely because he was running on sort of this message of economic change and a bunch of hateful stuff. But I think that was the big reason, the big thing that got him to win. And then I saw the Democrats' reaction to it. And it did not inspire much confidence. I don't think they're taking this moment seriously. I think we are living in the middle of an authoritarian coup. And the Democrats seem sort of satisfied to be treating this as politics as usual. They're kind of acting like we'll just wait for the backlash of Trump to build up. And then we'll run off of that backlash and we'll win in the next election cycle. And I just couldn't stand that. I just got madder and madder watching their sort of positioning and the way they're responding to Trump. And then I heard Nancy Pelosi on an interview soon after Trump won the second time. And she was asked straight up, like, what did the Democrats do wrong? How could they change? And her answer was nothing. She was like, we did our best. Sometimes it goes their way, sometimes it goes our way. And I feel like that sort of helplessness and is just like, that can't be what our message is going forward. We need to actually have a plan to dramatically improve people's lives. That's the only way we're going to defeat authoritarianism for good in this country. That's how FDR did it when we had rising authoritarianism in the 30s. He built a whole new economy and society that proved democracy can work. So I decided to jump in the race because this is what I've been working on for 10 years. And I feel like if I'm going to be calling on people to run around the country with me, I should be willing to put my skin in the game.
Yeah, and I think you've talked about this before, but Nancy Pelosi's been, in Congress, I think almost as long as you've been alive.
Yeah, she was, I think she got elected in 1987, so I was one back then. I'm 39 now, I have a 6-year-old kid, so I'm no young chicken here, spring chicken, so yeah.
Yeah, well you guys did an internal poll in regards to this race, and 51% said they supported her previously, but it was time for a change.
Yeah.
And 84% agreed that we need new Democratic leaders. That speaks pretty loudly, but what did you really take away from this poll?
Well, from the start of this campaign, we knew the only way this would be possible was if we were in this moment of a deep appetite for change. And there's sort of this bet that that's where we're at. Because, when I ran AOC's race in 2018, it was a similar moment. Trump had just won. Democrats were really upset at their own party, and they're looking for candidates who had some real vision of what comes next. And that was really why AOC could win, because she was the right candidate with the right message in the right moment. And when I look at the moment right now, I felt like it was dwarfing what the sort of appetite for change I saw back in 2018. And that's what I was seeing on the doors when I was knocking on doors. That's what I see on these voter calls I do every day. And this poll really bore that out. And the other piece of this poll is it showed that right now, if you test Nancy Pelosi versus myself in a head-to-head matchup, we're down 13. But if you tell people just my bio, right, just what I've done, and we tell people a positive bio about Nancy Pelosi, we say, she won the Medal of Freedom, she's one of the greatest speakers of all time, our campaign ends up winning by 6 points. So that really proves the theory of the campaign, which is if we just do the work of getting our message in front of every voter in San Francisco, we're going to win this race.
Yeah, and you, like you said, you've been knocking on doors. I watched. You have quite the social media presence. You're one of the people who, is showing up and speaking to people. And you called out. I just watched your social media video before walking in here. You have a rally on October 8th. Isn't that at the same time as Pelosi's dinner?
It's right after. So Pelosi's doing a lunch on October 3rd. where you can pay $50,000. I think there's a cheap discounted price for $500 per plate. But yeah, we're doing a rally on October 8th. It's completely free. Anybody can show up. We've got over 300 people signed up so far. And that's really what this campaign is. Because ultimately, I think the Democratic Party establishment, they believe political power comes through money, right? It comes through fundraising. And that's ultimately why the Democrats in power right now, they can never give up the donor class, right? If you're going to challenge that and you want to show the proof of a new kind of politics, it has to be people-driven. It has to be, people knocking on doors, volunteers coming out, mass rallies, a mass movement style politics that I think can win races like this, and I think can win nationally. I really do think that's sort of the model that people like Bernie and AOC are proving out. And I think that's going to be the real, challenge within the Democratic Party over the next several years is which politics are we going to choose? Are we going to choose the politics of a donor class driven Democratic Party that can't actually move on issues, is sclerotic in how we actually react to fascism, but also is keeping us from fully embracing the kind of very popular issues that the country wants. Things like banning congressional stock trading, right? Banning the revolving door between Congress and the lobbying industry, universal health care, universal child care, tuition-free public colleges, building millions of units of affordable housing, a wealth tax on billionaires and centimillionaires. These are all issues that actually poll at like 70, 80%, but Democrats won't embrace them because of the donor class. So I'm saying we need to have a politics in a Democratic Party that is full of people who will reject the donor class, run on the stuff that's actually popular, build a mass movement, and win that way. And I think we can do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I saw a Politico article recently that said that if you were elected to Congress, you yourself would be probably one of the wealthiest people to join, and there is a bit of a bad taste that the public has in their mouth when it comes to, the wealthier class. So why is it, that sets you apart from the people who are, the look down, the bad billionaires, the bad millionaires, these other class?
When that article came out, I think I tweeted about that, I've been exposed as a class traitor. But that whole experience, because the way I ended up making money was I was an early employee at a company called Stripe, right? And I basically won the lottery, which was crazy because I grew up middle class. I mean, my parents grew up extremely poor. My dad grew up as essentially a refugee in post-partition India. And I grew up going to public schools. And I never thought I'd make a bunch of money. But I ended up working just in the right place at the right time. And yeah, I worked hard, but I worked hard for a few years. And I ended up hitting the lottery and making a bunch of money. Whereas, at the same time, you've got nurses and teachers and firefighters and police workers, people who are actually running the city every day, who work way harder than I ever did. And most of them are never going to be able to afford a home in the city. They're not going to be able to afford a secure retirement. And I think an economy that's set up like this is absolutely batshit crazy. I really do. I think if we keep doing this, where we're just squeezing the middle class out and having all the money go to this top tiny group of people, while most people can't afford just the bare essentials, that will lead to America's demise. I'm not trying to be overly dramatic. I really think that's how countries just fail. And that's why, because I went through that experience, I've spent the last 10 years working on progressive politics. I think the system is completely rigged against working people and it has to change.
Yeah, and you have been a very progressive guy for a long time. And we're at a time where we have an administration who is saying that these people on the left, these far left progressives are violent, they're terrorists, and you're trying to come into Congress staying true to these policies. How do you feel about going up against that kind of rhetoric?
I think you have to you have to call the rhetoric for what it is, right? They are absolutely using this rhetoric as just a way to crush any dissent to this authoritarian government. They're starting by attacking trans people, by attacking undocumented immigrants. They're building up a paramilitary police force, and they're just doing the normal authoritarian playbook that people like Erdogan in Turkey and Orban in Hungary have done to completely crush all their opposition. So of course they're gonna do that. But ultimately, I am progressive, but I actually don't run on that label. What I talk about is what the policies I'm running on, because it is popular. I think that's really the big strength we have going our way, is the stuff I'm talking about at the end of the day, it's all very popular. And it's popular because, Americans in this country for decades now, most people have been seeing their wages completely flat, while the cost of healthcare, childcare, housing, and education, all that has been skyrocketing, right? These are the essentials. This is how you build a life. And if that trend doesn't reverse, I think we are going to keep seeing the pendulum swinging, left and right, and usually it's going to go farther right every time, and authoritarians are going to win. So we have to actually stop the authoritarianism that's right in front of us, and I think that happens by going at it head on, by trying to keep them from, making the abnormal normal, which is what they do, and that's a daily fight, right? That's calling out all the abuses they're doing and sticking to it. But after we do that, we have to actually deliver a better life for people. That's the only way we're going to defeat this.
Yeah. You said, on that note, like you've previously said, we need to tack to the hypothetical middle. You've said in your more recently, our Democratic Party leaders are unfit to lead in this world as it is today. You've been pretty strong for years now on these unproductive, more moderate Democrats. Is that something, do you feel like there's going to be an opposition if you were in Congress going up against those claims?
Yeah, and I'm calling to replace, it's not just the moderate Democrats, because whenever we talk about it as progressive versus moderate, it makes it sound like there's these policies where we disagree. I really think it's doing stuff versus doing nothing Democrats. I think what we've got is a Democratic establishment and a leadership right now that finds security in doing as little as possible. That's what we're seeing right now. Their approach to Trump has been, let's do as little as possible and win off the backlash. And my approach would be, we actually have to do something, right? And the stuff I'm calling to do is popular, right? Therefore, the stuff I'm calling to do, if just by definition, is centrist if it's popular, right? If most people support it, that's what most people want. That's the center position. But I do think that the current leadership we have, they're completely ill-equipped to deal with the kind of politics the Republicans are doing right now, and they're not interested in coming up with how do we actually fundamentally change the system. And part of that comes from, I think, a lack of imagination, but part of it comes from, they are ultimately beholden to a donor and corporate class that doesn't want this system to change. They're doing well in the system.
Yeah. Do you were a part of the Green New Deal as well. Is that something, and that's been used really as like a boogeyman for the GOP. And, I think it was even Lee Zeldin who used the term, we're going to drive a dagger through the heart of the Green New Deal, which doesn't exist currently.
Right.
So it's funny for them to say that. But is that something, that you would want to revive and push forward today?
Well, I'd say the thing I've been working on for the last 5 years is a plan we've been calling the Mission for America, which is basically a Green New Deal with the details filled in. I wouldn't say this is a campaign strategy, but it's a very detailed policy proposal and a political strategy. It's kind of like our version of Project 2025. If Democrats win and we have this chance to actually not just solve climate change, but actually build up wealth for the vast majority of Americans, build the factories and the high-wage jobs that a lot of people who voted for Trump, thought they were going to be getting with Donald Trump. How do we do that? So that's really what I've been focusing on. And I think ultimately the only way we win this is going to be not just expanding the social safety net, but building back people's means of making a living. And I think that's what's been decimated. If you look at the deindustrialized Midwest, it's gone from this place where people used to be able to graduate high school and get like a $50 an hour job at Ford. And that's all gotten replaced with minimum wage work at Walmart, right? Of course people are angry. And of course, when they hear someone like Trump show up and say, the politician shipped away your means of making a living to China and I'm going to bring it back, people are going to they're going to say, okay, let's try that out, right? But Trump's going to fail at that. In fact, he's destroying manufacturing jobs right now. So how are Democrats going to respond? What's our version of actually building up wealth? And I think that is, right now, when I talk about the Green New Deal or the Mission for America, it's not just about climate change. It's the fact that we have a $100 trillion global green transition happening with or without us. And right now we're just saying, let China have all the wealth. Let Europe have all the wealth. We're going to be Kodak while the digital camera revolution's happening. That's kind of what this is like. And I don't want to live in a country that's just getting left behind.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't really have a lot of other questions, but I did want to ask, I am curious, you spend a lot of time with Bernie, with AOC. Have they had, I looked, I didn't see anything from my quick glances, but did they have any reaction to you announcing that you were running?
Not publicly, no. I think, even for them, like it's difficult. I'm going up against Nancy Pelosi, right? And Bernie's friends with Nancy Pelosi, and I get it. Like this is a race where I think my job is to make the race competitive and to actually build up traction and show I've got grassroots momentum. And before I go to someone like Bernie or AOC and say, hey, do you want to get involved? But they're busy also. I mean, they're trying to do their fighting oligarchy tour, and I'd say they're being successful as some of the only Democrats actually showing some fight right now.
Like I said, I don't think I have any other
All right.
specific questions. I mean, I will say, I used to live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to be back here, and I really appreciate seeing your tour around the city. Is there anything, that I haven't brought up that, maybe you want to talk about?
Well, I will say, at the end of the day, something I'm really trying to talk about with this campaign is how the issues we face in the city in San Francisco, they're not problems that San Francisco created on its own. They really are downstream from the fact that we've just been ignoring these big structural issues nationally for decades. If you look at healthcare is one of the major reasons our city budget keeps exploding in the city. San Francisco's not going to be able to solve that, right? We have to solve that at a national level. Otherwise, the only answer San Francisco has is we just got to keep cutting services. And that's happening not just in San Francisco, but in cities all across the country. I really do think at the end of the day, this is about trying to get people to realize that if we don't really face up and fix these big problems, we can't just retreat into our cities and into our states and hope for safety and hope for freedom that way. We actually have to solve it nationally. Otherwise, these problems are coming for all of us. And the problems that San Francisco faces, you see them everywhere, right? Whether it's homelessness, cost of living, it's really bad in San Francisco because of how bad our inequality is, but you see versions of it in every city across the country. So I really do think that to solve these problems for San Francisco, we have to solve them for the whole country.
Yeah, Saikat, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate it.